Hello, everybody. Today is day 198 and a reading from Isaiah chapter 18 through chapter 22. Now, we're continuing the prophetic words which point to future events, and especially we recognize the horror of these many chapters here. So you can be reading this and it seems somewhat depressing and oppressive because it is a picture of the tragic end of all things prior to the return of Christ. Now, the word woe is used here in this first chapter, chapter 18, and it's the first of many woes pronounced upon various nations. And so Jesus himself also used the word woe as he's describing events that will transpire in the final days. Now look in verse 3. Jehovah, the Bible tells us, is going to blow a trumpet at the second coming of Christ. The trumpet of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more. Now that points to the point of which God comes and brings finality to evil and the rule of Antichrist. God, in this passage here, is going to destroy all of those resistors, in particular here, the Ethiopians and other nations who are under Antichrist rule. Verse 6, the nations represented here are destroyed at Armageddon. This is the battle of all battles at the end of the age when Christ breaks through the sky, coming with the armies of heaven, and will bring an end to wickedness and evil and the rule of Antichrist and Satan himself. And the nations that will be destroyed here then are described that the death toll will be so intense that the meat of these decaying bodies will be food for the beast and the birds. And Jesus makes mention of this, that the carcasses will be feasted upon by the birds. Now in chapter 19, in the first verse, it says, and the heart of Egypt will melt in its midst. That is Egypt recognizing, witnessing this horror that's coming upon the whole world. Jesus makes mention of this in Luke chapter 21 in the 26th verse, in which he says, men's hearts will fail them for fear of the things coming upon the face of the earth. The tribulation or great tribulation period will be so intense, leading then up to the final battle of all battles. Now, of all of chapter 19 has a tribulation millennial fulfillment. That's why these things have not been fulfilled yet. They are pictures of things to come. Many predictions listed here have not been fulfilled and will not be so until Christ comes. Now, the many millions under Antichrist rule, no doubt will extend in a battle into Egypt, resulting in confusion and civil war among Egypt. Now, Judah will be a terror to Egypt, the Bible tells us in the 19th chapter and the 16th verse, as Israel is regathered back to its nation and its strength is fortified. Then we see something marvelous happening in verse 19, the word in that day. It indicates that Egypt, or the Egyptians, are going to return to God and be converted. Now, this is a marvelous thing to consider because we consider Egypt as an enemy and obviously will be a part of Antichrist influence. But the thing is that there is going to be, from all nations, there's going to be a conversion to Christ, recognizing him as the Messiah, the supreme ruler of the universe. And this has not happened in the past, where the Egyptians have identified Jehovah God or Jesus. In fact, the words here which point to the return of Christ uses the word Savior or Mighty One. And Egypt and Assyria will be blessed by God along with restored Israel. And all of this gives hope that those who we think are unreachable, those that we think are very hardened in heart, that could never possibly come to Jesus, these passages here give us hope that even hard Egypt is going to be impacted by the coming and the events that transpire in that day. Now, chapter 20 warns that Israel should not depend upon Egypt or Ethiopia, but to trust God as the only source of help. And this is a warning to all of us, not to rely upon resources around us, but to turn and to look to God. Babylon will be destroyed in chapter 21, and many have tried to determine where is Babylon and what is this reference to. But the prophet here is describing destruction everywhere. He has this vision. The Revelations describe this. Babylon is a evil, wicked world system, and evil nations in general who are a part of this end time conglomeration of nations controlled by Antichrist. Now, the word watchman is found in these passages here as one's describing a warning. There are watchmen who are taken unprepared, as Jesus warned, don't fall asleep. But the watchmen that we hear here are describing or warning of the coming destruction and are warning people to prepare and get their hearts ready. This is our call. We have been called to be watchmen, and we have been called to be a warning to those of things that are coming. I believe that we are living in the days leading up to the return of Christ and the rule of Christ. Now, in this vision, what the prophet saw in Babylon falling was such great suffering that it appalled him. And he entered into their pain, and he was torn up by what he saw. And you and I also, even people that, who we've been offended by, or people who we see as wicked and evil, when we see them coming under great pain and suffering, it would impact us. And so when we read all this, I believe that it's a warning, and we must be watchmen, that we must be willing to alert and to be on guard ourselves, because all of this denotes that the spirit of Antichrist is going to bring a seduction that's going to lead many people astray, and that we are to be watchmen on the wall, warning those whom God brings into our life of a coming judgment, and that now is the time to give your life to Jesus Christ, the great Savior of the world.